Welcome back to PuckPod by BD Sports, episode 83. I'm Cristian Chiniti, joined by David Leo, Brandon Brown, Aidan Cowling McDonald. We're down one. No Brian Wong today. He's off to Thunder Bay for some lovely school. We're still in school, but we're also lucky enough to still be on the pod right now. How are we doing today, guys?
Great.
Doing pretty good,
Yeah,
Brandon.
man, can't complain. Everything is coming up roses right now.
Brandon's got a new
Awesome.
haircut right now. Like,
You look
Brandon, you're
Feeling good,
looking
eh?
looking
Thank you,
stylish
boys.
right
Thank you,
now.
thank you.
you look suave.
Appreciate
Very.
it.
Suave as hell. Yeah. Okay. Wow. We have a great episode here today, guys, because for the first time since we've added Brandon and Aidan, we're finally going to talk Leafs. We literally have not talked about the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't know. It's been months on months. And obviously, at the end of the day, that's the team that we follow the most closely. So, oops, it's all Leafs this episode. So, buckle in and get ready for a lot of Leaf content. Just a quick rundown of what we're going to cover. Of course, Auston Matthews named the captain a couple weeks ago. We are also going to talk about left wing for the Maple Leafs. Is it lackluster? Is there not enough depth there? Are they just fine? We'll get into that, and obviously looking at the blue line as well. And we'll each give you one of our favorite offseason moves made by the Maple Leafs. So without further ado, let's get into our first topic. Auston Matthews being named captain, taking over for John Tavares in that regard. He was named captain back on August 14th, Wednesday. 26th captain in franchise history. Guys, is this just a formality or was there something more to this change? Is this going to bring about something new to the dynamic of the Toronto Maple Leafs?
I think it will. I think, Matthews was unbelievable last season, but I honestly think it'll give him even more confidence going into next year. I was really happy when they announced the change. I've been wanting this to happen for probably I'd say 2 years now. And there's nothing against Tavares. He's a great leader. I just think, Matthews face of your franchise. I think you had to eventually give it to him. And I wasn't sure how they were gonna do it. Like I thought maybe they'd wait until maybe Tavares departed from the Leafs, but the fact that he signed off on it and was so supportive, I think it was a great move. And I think the execution was even better.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that, but I do sort of see it more as a formality. I think it's kind of been like the worst kept secret that it's kind of been Auston Matthews' team, and it kind of has been for a couple of years now. Especially after that, like the first season that he hit 60. I think that was like the first time where it really looked like it was running through him, right? Like the whole team was firing on all cylinders. And when he's firing on all cylinders, the team follows suit. Um, Last year, I think it really just confirmed it. I think you could also see like through his maturity and his play on the ice itself. Um, it really has become his team. I would say for close to 2 years now.
Yeah, you guys are 100% right. It has been kind of an easy transition for Auston Matthews, it feels like, to take over the leadership on the ice. And now that he's got the captaincy, we'll see how it affects them on off the ice as well. But for me, I was kind of surprised. I don't know about you guys, like to kind of when we got the notification that they were eventually going to make this change. I was kind of taken aback, just hoping for the best in terms of how they were going to approach it, and they did it amazingly. I think John Tavares being there, really being the mouthpiece and kind of the vessel in which that this takes place, really helps show that this team is really still connected in terms of its core. And I think if Auston Matthews is as great as a leader as we're hearing now, and we should expect great things. And I think they're in a position to do that. So that's good.
Yeah, there's two sides to this coin, right? You have obviously the Tavares factor and Matthews being named the captain. Sticking like with Tavares there, I do think we learned more about him from this whole scenario than we did about Auston. Because like I agree that I don't think too much changes for Auston and how he's gonna lead. I'm not expecting him to really bring a new leadership style. He's always kind of been that understated guy. He'll give you a good quote, but he's not about to be some loud fiery guy on the bench or in the dressing room afterwards. But with Tavares, I don't think any of us really had the feeling that he'd be willing to give up the C in the manner that he did. Like you said, Brandon, this definitely could have went down differently. Hearing that news that there's going to be a change of the captaincy, is this a scenario like we saw twice in San Jose where it was more of a stripping than it was a transition? And obviously that wasn't the case. It was executed really well. And yeah, I think we learned a lot about JT and just about, I guess, the commitment he has to the team, to being able to strip himself of the C, really, like to let go of that ego, if there is any, that comes with wearing the C, and let bygones be bygones, give Auston the C. And who knows, maybe this can benefit him as well, wearing an A. We also know the other two guys wearing an A are Morgan Rielly and Mitch Marner. How do we feel about this leadership group as a whole now? It's not really changed much. Is there anything that you think could have gone differently with that transition with the A's? Anything?
I mean,
I mean,
it's relative. Sorry, Brando.
go ahead, Dave.
It's
No,
relatively
go ahead.
it's relatively stayed the same, right? Like that's how it's been since the you look at like Matthews, Nylander, and Marner in particular came in. It's always kind of been those, at least for Matthews and Marner. So it's a I don't know if it's I don't know how you want to take it, but it's kind of something to note that somebody like Willie has really never had his chance to get a letter on his jersey. Has he ever gotten? I don't think so.
He's maybe worn it, maybe if there's been an injury, like maybe as a one-off
Yeah.
type of thing.
Like as an
Yeah, he's never
alternate,
been
like,
named.
like
Yeah,
alternate.
Yeah.
literally.
I think he's
yeah, an alternate
he's the
to
first
alternate.
guy. He's the first guy that typically will get it if like a Marner or a Matthews had been injured in the past. It typically would
It
go right
gets
to him with
it's a
within
deferral,
Rielly,
yeah.
right? But other than that, like no, they've never named him, I don't think specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, so like those
It is interesting.
that
Like, there's not a lot of names that you could go with other than like Willie's the only one. Like, there's no one else.
yeah,
Nobody.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
the
and that
list
just
literally
like
ends after one guy.
that really just goes to like with the way that the team's been built. Like those five guys that we've just talked about have been the core pillars of the team. For Riley's case since 2013, the other three since at least 2016, right? Like that's we're nearing a decade for the whole lot of them, right? In Riley's case, over a decade. And it's for me, it's a bit more of a curious case for those three in particular, and that being Rielly, Nylander, and Marner. In Nylander's case, somebody who really hasn't gotten his chance with of the full-time like captaincy. Like, you know, this is a guy now, he's in the top 5 of in terms of player salaries now. Does that maybe spur him on? Like, what does that do for him? You look at the other guys in the top 10, all of them are either captains or alternate captains for the most part. What does that say about how the organization feels about his leadership qualities? And then in the case of somebody like Morgan Rielly, who when there was that gap between the Leafs not having a captain and naming John Tavares as their this era's captain, Morgan Rielly's name as well with Tavares and Matthews kept getting brought up, and a lot of people were seemingly on board with Rielly as captain, and obviously with Mitch Marner kind of sometimes being like the second in show, sometimes being the first class like premier option on the team, also kind of getting passed over. I know it's a difficult subject, it's a difficult conversation to have, and it's just something that I wanted to bring up and I wanted to guess and kind of get some feelers out about what you guys think. Those three in particular, like those are the guys that have been pegged on to be the leaders in the team, and sometimes it does feel like maybe they're a little bit slighted. That's how I kind of read it sometimes, but they kind of just go along with it. Like we've never heard any backlash against it, at least like to the public. So I don't know. How do you guys feel about that?
I feel like if they wanted to really shake things up, maybe they take the A away from Marner and give it to Willie. But, you know, knowing Marner and like how his like kind of circle has dealt with outside decisions in the past, I feel like that's probably something that would have, probably like left like a sour taste in the dressing room. Um, but honestly, I feel like as much as it's like a big deal that they switched around the captaincy, like Craig, Brad, they were pretty clear that, hey, just because there's a certain letter on someone's jersey or not, it doesn't mean like players cannot be a leader. So I'd say like Willie's probably like even more of an example between like Matthews and Tavares of just being like a leader by example. Like I really doubt Willie's giving like a hoorah speech like that. So like
Probably not.
yeah,
But
probably
he
not.
His
he
overall speech is like
he's
3 words long, and that's
Yeah.
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and his is always
Yeah.
like his speech is normally left on the ice, right? Like he doesn't talk with his words, he talks with his play.
But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would say there was a potential to reward him. We all saw what happened in the playoffs on the bench. He's
The
kind of
spat.
giving it to them, and he's trying to keep
Yeah.
guys accountable. I'm not saying that specifically, merits a change, but was an opportunity there to at least get him into the fold, perhaps. And like Marner, I think what Aidan said about personality and his deal's coming up, and maybe they don't want to ruffle feathers if they still obviously there were talks of trading him. That hasn't happened. No one knows really what the situation looks like long term. So it might have just been the smart, easy play to just keep things a status quo, just make the big change and kind of move on.
It's
Overall,
definitely fair to say though that like the A definitely means more to Mitch than it would to Willie. Like I'm sure if you
yeah.
asked
I
both
think
of them
so.
too, like
Yeah.
that's how they. If you just sent those two into a room and said, "You guys figure out who's wearing the A," like it would come out the same. Mitch would be wearing
Yeah.
the A, and Willie would be like, "Yeah, that's fine." So
Overall, I think it's a good thing that like I I think it's a good thing that like the players aren't really viewing the letters as like an end all be all about who can be a leader.
yeah, yeah.
I
No, I
wish they
agree.
would
See
At the
share
end of the
now,
day,
more.
like the letters that
I
everyone has on their jersey are the ones that spell out Toronto Maple Leafs, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what you've got going on there. Just while we were having this conversation, I was trying to think of like, come on, there's gonna be like at least one other name to consider, and I guess it's the guy like who hasn't played a single game yet. Like probably Chris Tanev could wear an A. Obviously, you wouldn't give it to him right out of the gate. That's not gonna
I mean
happen. But
they gave it to JT right out of the gate, right? But he was
sure,
coming off being
sure,
a captain. So
yeah,
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 definitely a different situation. There are guys on the team who can definitely grow into that. Like there's already leaders
Well,
on the team pre-built. Say if they want to eventually move off of now, I don't know if you're gonna have to pick between somebody like a Marner or a Nylander. They already picked Nylander, so it's really just Marner. That's kind of the odd man out currently. But there is options currently, and that would be in like a like for like switch Marner for Nylander with just in terms of like the letter. But then you have a couple of guys now coming up who you would hope, and not to put this much pressure on them, all like to add on to the pressure, but you've got guys like Easton Cowan, and you have guys like Easton
nice,
Cowan and who? Oh my god! Oh,
Matthew
Matty Nice.
Knies.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I kept thinking
yeah.
Bobby McMahon. I was like, that's not the name that I that I want to come out right now. I mean, he could if he wants, but who knows? But yeah, those two in particular, like those are two guys. If this ends up going sideways, that maybe those two guys are the next generation of people to come in. Who knows?
That's definitely like years off. It's interesting though that like when you think about this era, there was so many guys who could wear letters, and now it feels like it's been reduced to just the suspect names. Like Muzzin was a guy who did wear an A, like that was a through
Yeah.
and through guy who you want a letter on. Hyman could have worn an A. I think he did wear it sometimes.
Probably did.
Kadri at the very beginning, like Bozak, those guys, and now it's just there's none of those
What
guys
what
really. There
about
really isn't. Like you're not giving Domi the A or
what
something
about all
like that.
those
Like
short
Not
it's
term
yet.
signings? They would even make like those like
Jumbo
the
Joe,
one
Patrick
year
Yeah.
Marlowe, like
sets.
Spezza.
Like they had three guys that
Yeah,
were former captains on the team
yeah,
that they never gave letters, but you always kind of assumed that they'd be in that leadership position
yes,
regardless.
yeah.
Well, I
I
would say
wonder
that
if it's a deliberate choice by like the new management
yeah.
to be like, hey, there's been all these different options. What if we took all these options away and forced these guys like you got to do it? There is no one to lean on. Figure it out. You are the leaders now. Maybe I don't know.
I think it's just a matter of the roster, like the way that they've been putting the roster together, especially
Yeah.
this season, they're moving away from that, so much veteran presence where they're kind of looking for guys more in their prime to try to bring in. Obviously, they didn't bring in too much
And that's
outside of the Tanev. Obviously, is a good example of an
Yeah.
older player, but and Ekman Larson too. Actually, I'm making my own argument against me, but
yeah.
but they're not ready to step into that leadership. A sneaky guy, I would say, is like David Camp. He doesn't play a ton, but he's been around probably of that bottom six group. He's the longest tenured guy. If you say they traded Marner and hypothetically Tavares retired, like he'd probably be the next guy in line to get, but not much of a leader. I don't know. Maybe not in the room.
He's
I'm
always
not
I'm
sure.
trying to
like
think
a
of a single David Camp
coach's
quote. Can
favorite.
you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. I'm
Yeah,
trying to
so
think of
he's another
anything, and I
one.
like David Camp. I like him.
He's probably
Yeah.
he's probably one of those guys that another one that doesn't lead in the media, but he leads like in the locker room. He leads on the ice,
Yeah.
like with his
He is.
his style of play.
I always like to say, I've said this to Dave, like since we started doing this podcast, that I love guys that like I can tell if I want a guy on my team by the way he celebrates a goal, just the look on his face. And David Camp has the look, like he looks ready to run through a wall when he scores a goal because he doesn't do it often, and
Yeah.
he gets hyped as hell about it. I always say like the guy that I put as the golden example for this is Mark Stone. You watch Mark Stone score a goal, that guy looks like ready to kill someone. So I like that about David Camp. But the fact that we got into David Camp on a assistant captain discussion tells me that it's run its course. So we'll move on, talk about maybe the lack of veterans on the left wing for the Maple Leafs at forward. So right now, I guess if you're doing a potential lineup, you're probably slotting Nyes on first line left wing, then maybe McMahon, Nick Robertson, and Connor Dewar. Those are the four names right now. And Robertson obviously isn't signed yet. But yeah, speaking of a lack of veteran presence, between these four guys, I'll give you the rundown of how many games they've played. I don't have them right in front of me, but I looked at them very recently. So sorry if I'm a couple games off. But Nyes has played, I think, 83. McMahon, I think, 66. Robertson, 87. And the only guy who's played more than 100 is Connor Dewar with 190. So there's not a lot of experience on this left wing at all. And where there is some, it's at the least important position. Does that matter at all? Can the Leafs get by with this lack of veteran experience? And the reason we bring this up is because Elliot Friedman on Sunday in his 32 Thoughts, the blog, not podcast, and one of his thoughts were, quote unquote, I think there are things percolating out there, including Toronto considering left wing options. Should they be considering some options?
Yeah, I think they have to if they want to, have more success than they have in the past. I think to start out the year, I'd be okay with McMahon on the second line. But like one name that I've heard that they could be interested in, I don't know what like the asking price would be, but Max Pacioretty, I could get behind that.
Is he signed anywhere?
He's not, he's free agent right now. Like he's probably at this point
be like a PTO.
Yeah. So like we're talking
Tanner
like
Pearson's
less than
getting one.
mil.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I last I remember he was on Washington.
Yeah, he was on a 1-year deal for that too. Because poor dude, double Achilles injuries in one season.
Yeah.
So this would be good to have Brian on to get the scouting report on Max Pacioretty because I can't say I know how he did last year in Washington. But I don't know. To me, you look at those four left wingers and they kind of all, maybe not Dewar, but at least Nyes, McMahon, Robertson. Those are all guys that you're like, they're more offense first on the younger side, at least McMahon in his career, not age. But you need guys who bring a different dimension, I think, to that left wing. Like you need a two-way left winger, right? Someone that can play defensively.
I would say Robertson, but he doesn't even want to be in Toronto. So
yeah. That's the other report that came out.
Robertson's also like he's so stuck in like the old model of doing things here. It's that he's got one thing, and that's his shot. And his shot is fantastic. But we kind of had this discussion today, like amongst ourselves, like what else does Nick Robertson bring to the table? He's not a really good skater, as Cristian always brings up. His skating style is very clunky. Can you give us your impression of Nick Robertson skating, Cristian?
Yeah, let me get up and I'll go on my synthetic. No, but I'll like I'll explain though, because I recognize that. You know why? Because that's how I used to skate when I played hockey. Like very leaned over, and it's like a really choppy stride, and they're very small strides. So like he gets the job done in terms of speed. But what sucks is when you get into a corner, when you're not like upright, you get knocked off the puck really easily, and you're just not on your feet all the time. So
Which
yeah,
happens quite
it's not
often.
conducive to success. Yeah, it happens very
It
often.
happens to him quite often, and also it's not like he's 6'3" and can like bounce off checks. He is undersized. He's underweight. He will get pummeled in most situations. So he can't really skate that well. He's got the shot. You know, his playmaking like up to the standard? I would say he's a fine playmaker.
It's okay.
He's fine.
Yeah.
He doesn't excel at playmaking by any stretch, but he's fine with it. And he also doesn't play defense. So Nick, you have guys on the team that do multiple of those things and more, but you're the one that wants out. You want the bigger chance. Hey pal, take a look in the mirror, buddy. I don't know how much that's gonna work on this team. They need somebody with a different MO about them. They can't have another guy like Nick Robertson. Feels like he's in a long line of players that we've seen come and go. He reminds me, honestly, this is gonna sound so bad. He reminds me of like Nick Patan sometimes. Just for some reason, he just gives me Nick Patan vibes. Even though I know he's much better than Nick Patan. But does anybody remember Nick Patan career highlights? I don't know.
Man, he scored that, or no, did he not score that goal? I can't remember if he scored or if Marc-Andre Fleury robbed his ass, and then that led to
Marc-Andre Fleury
Babcock
robbed his
being,
ass.
yeah, and that led to Babs
That
being
is
fired.
exactly.
That is his greatest
Nick Patan's career
contribution to
highlight,
the team.
that he got Mike Babcock fired. So
he was a beat.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Juniors.
Yeah,
He was.
no, Nick Patan,
He was a
he
beast.
had some hype behind him at one point in time. I think like best case scenario at this point with Nicky Robbie is that he turns into like a Daniel Sprong, where it's just pure offense. That's about it. But I'll be honest too, like we talked about his shot being his best skill. I'm not even so sold on that because it feels like he needs forever to get it off sometimes, or he needs like incredibly open space. Right? You watch him on a power play sometimes. He's got his stick in the air waiting for a clapper that never comes. And then even sometimes when it does, the amount of times I've seen him hesitate with the puck or have it on his stick and then end up not getting off the shot he wanted is too many that I can remember. So I don't know. I what I do love about Robertson is his motor and like his will to get better is insane. It just feels like he's limited by stuff out of his control, like his frame. That really feels like what it comes down to. So I don't blame him for wanting like a change of scenery, honestly. And it could do the Leafs some better. They don't really have a lot of like room to maneuver around it. Like unless it's like Aidan said, like bringing in a free agent for really, really cheap. I don't really know if there's much you can do trade wise other than getting like another team's Nick Robertson, which still might be worth it. Like I bring it up all the time, like a Tomasino in Nashville has fallen out of favor a couple times. Is that a type of move you make? It's definitely not, like I said, like getting someone defensively responsible, but it might be just mutually beneficial for both guys, both teams. Switch two problems and see if they fix themselves. I don't really have any other ideas with Nick Robbie. How do we feel about McMahon on the second line, though, too? Or yeah, you can finish the thought on Nicky Robbie, but then let's move to McMahon because I think he's the other question mark.
Yeah, no, and I don't even really, I agree with everything you guys are saying. Like even when you look beyond what you projected, if you're talking about, how does a potential Fraser Mitten or Easton Cowan, like no one knows about these things that could be why Robertson feels like he's going to be pushed out soon enough. It may not be the roster that we have right now because you would think, there's no better chance for a guy like him to show this year. In past years, of course, he's been, kind of stuck behind other guys, but this year, like there's no better opportunity to come in and potentially, move up. He could fit on the second line if he has a good 10, 20 games, right? But I just don't see it. I'd rather go almost with a younger guy, and a 19-year-old than a 22-year-old in today's NHL. Give a younger guy a chance to maybe grow into a position you see him in the future. It's hard when you're the Leafs and you're trying to, contend right away, but I don't see what a Nicky Robertson gives you that, another guy might not. So if it is about bringing somebody in and giving them a shot, I'm all for that. Um, and I would try to just make it work in whatever way possible. But you just want to know who's coming in and who's going to be playing. It's getting really close now to training camps, obviously, and the season getting going. So you don't want to be, still making decisions and making changes, to the core parts of your roster. Really, when you look at it, that's a big spot to fill, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah.
Anything on McMahon, guys? Because like even there, I'm really not sold
I
on
I
second
mean,
line
has
McMahon.
was he like not like the biggest surprise of the season? Like he has to
Sure.
like had to have been for the
There
Leafs
was a
wise.
point in time where he caught Bertuzzi in goals when Bertuzzi was stuck
Yeah,
on 6 goals for forever, and McMahon
yeah.
for I think 5 minutes had 7, and the Bertuzzi scored in the same game. So yeah,
So the one thing I want to just say about Bobby McMahon is I can remember, I think this would have been now 2 years ago. It would have been like his first stint with the Leafs. He had a game against, I think it was Detroit. And he was looking for his first ever goal. I believe he had 2 goals called back that game. I know he had one for sure called back, and he never. I think he maybe got an assist or something. Like he. But the one thing about Bobby McMahon is 2 goals disallowed doesn't matter. He is like he will. He he's always on the puck. Like it's ridiculous. Like, the guy is quite literally like a dog like a dog with a bone on the puck. He's always in there. He doesn't really like let anything kind of get at him. Like he's always just there. He in some ways reminds me of like a Zach Hyman-esque type player. Like Zach Hyman, we named him the junkyard dog because all that guy would do is go fetch pucks in the corner. Now, is Bobby McMahon exactly like that? Probably not. But in front of the net, dude, Bobby McMahon will put some like he's finding his feet and he's gonna put some home. I know Cristian always describes him as the most fourth liner to ever fourth line. Has he
he's
broken that label
graduated
for
from
you?
that. Yeah, he's absolutely
Yeah,
graduated from that. Yeah.
yeah.
No, if you're not playing
But
on
he's
the most fourth liners
I
ever
think
fourth line, never get off the fourth line. He's done that at
I
least.
still
Yeah,
think I still think he's got like an essence of that label. Like what do you want in your fourth liners? You want somebody to dig for the puck. You want somebody to battle. That's exactly what Bobby McMahon does. So in some ways, I think you're completely correct with that label that you gave him. And I don't think it's a mark of shame being like a fourth liner like that. Like he does his job, and I'm honestly I'm pretty excited to see a full season of Bobby McMahon. If we get Bobby McMahon from like I think it was like February where he really started to like just seemingly find the score sheet every other game. If we get that for a full season, I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised with the type of player that he is.
for sure. Yeah, I'd love to talk some Easton Cowan too because he is definitely the X factor. But we'll have plenty of time to talk Easton Cowan when we see him in training camp and get more looks at him. He definitely performed well in the couple games he got last year, and definitely be excited to get more looks at him and see how he might factor into this left wing conundrum. Who knows? Maybe by the time we get there, it sorts itself out with the trade or something. Let's spend a little bit of time on the D pairs here. How do we see this shaking out? I kind of just have this as a blank discussion. If you have anything on the defense that you're questioning in terms of who's playing with who, how is this person going to be deployed? Let's hear it. I've got some thoughts, but do any of you guys have something burning on your minds on the defensive side?
I just want to see Riley and Tanev together.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And my one concern, well, not concern, just like I'm curious, not with like the 5-on-5 pairings, but with the power play. Like I'm wondering, how would you guys feel if maybe would you guys put Riley and Ekman Larson on pair together for the power play or split them up?
You guys go first. I've got
I
thoughts on this.
I'm in kind of two minds about it. We've seen the 4 forward power play system work and also get stymied. I'm not opposed to, and I'm not opposed to trying anything out. If you tell me right now, we're going to throw David Camp net front, try it. If it starts to get in a rut, the one problem I've always had with like, at least this like past era of the Leafs is they always fell into the cycle of insanity. They would always do the same thing and expect different results. They would always get kind of like stuck in the mud, and they keep like turning the tires. Like, obviously you're gonna be stuck. Like, you need to fix something here. If this power play doesn't get off to a lightning start like it normally does, I would say, hey, go for it. Try the two, try three forwards 2D. Try maybe just letting Ekman Larson like run power play one. Like, he's done it before in Arizona. To what effect that was, I don't know, but he's done
In
it
Arizona,
before.
he did it good. He did do it. He did it well in Arizona.
I wouldn't go as far as to say, like, what is the definition of good in Arizona? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no,
he's
that
fine.
when
He
was
is fine. He will do the job.
yeah.
Like, that's it. That's all you need. You need somebody to do the job, and he can. I think he could. So that's my thing. Like, I don't care if it doesn't work. Just try something new. That's my thing.
Brando, what do you
Well,
got?
I'd say you're more likely to see just Ekman Larson out there on the power play one without Riley potentially than seeing both guys out there. But I still think, new coaching staff kind of coming in. I think Mark Savard is probably going to run the power play, right? So he's probably going to come in, bring in his philosophies and really try to implement that with the 5 guys that they have on the first power play, because they're all fantastic guys. Like, realistically, Riley is the best offensive defenseman you still have on this team. Regardless of if he has the hardest slap shot or whatever. Like, for me, that's a huge thing. I think a booming shot from the point would be absolutely huge for this team, a real threat from the point, with the shooters that you have on the wings. But that's for another day. But Riley still offers them, I think, the best, chemistry as well within that group of 5. And I think they've shown that they can be a top 3 power play in the NHL if things go well. So we'll see what happens. But
As
Here,
as I asked that question and listening to you guys, I thought about that idea, and I'm thinking maybe that's a move for potentially the postseason. Just because I forget what game it was, but I can picture it against Boston. Do you guys? I know they gave up at least one shorthanded goal off of like a turnover. Like, do you guys remember any more? But I remember that one, and it was with the 4 forwards. So maybe that's
In this playoff, I think it might have. I think I know what you're talking about. I forgot what game it
yeah.
was. I think it was only that one, but
Okay.
I don't know. Does that also not kind of come with the risk of running? That's always was the
yeah,
risk with the
I'm
four
not pinning
forward,
that on
right?
like yeah, I'm not pinning that on the Leafs. Um, I think we've moved on from like the discussion now is definitely about the defensive, like the slap shot. I think that's where the conversations moved. There was a point in time where all anyone wanted to talk about with the Leafs power play was the drop pass, the entry, right? That was
yeah,
everyone's sticking
Yeah.
point. We've moved past that. I think everyone's fine with their system now. I don't think many people have a problem with how they play defensively on the power play. But yeah, you guys touched on it there, like the Riley or OEL, both. Who are you going with? I would definitely want to see OEL in that spot to start the season, give him a good run with it. Um, I I looked
You
into
want
like,
it
okay,
right out
what
of the
does
gate?
I you're gonna test run it for sure in the preseason. I think that's what we'll see,
Yeah.
and depending on
That's
what that looks like, he'll get his shot or not. But he does shoot the puck hard. He is in the 97th percentile in terms of last year for average shot speed. So he shoots it hard. The thing is, I looked in, okay, how many power play goals or how many slap shot goals does this guy score? One last year, and that's as many as Riley. So there's a question of the process versus the results, but maybe you don't need a guy who's actually going to score with the slap shot, just be the threat. Because that's the thing with Riley is that you see him patrolling the blue line, and the defensive team always knows he's looking for a pass, or it's that sifter, the seeing eye shot. That sometimes works really well, but not all the time. It's not. You got to have something else. You got to have something else in
and,
your repertoire.
and once somebody closes one of those two options up, you limit. Like, if you only
Yeah,
have two options,
yeah.
obviously the other
That,
option is going to be the like You know,
That's
it
what
just
so
limits
they
your
take away the pass
success.
from him, right? They force him to, it's like, okay, you're either gonna put a crappy shot on net or you're gonna make the pass to the other side. I'm gonna block the short side pass, and then yeah, it's very easy to know
Yeah.
what's coming next. So with OEL, maybe he doesn't have to score with a bomb, but as long as you have the threat of a shot, and he shoots more often than Riley does on the power play. The only problem is he puts the puck into defenders' shins as often as he does on net. So that's what I learned
Hey,
as well. Riley's more
listen,
efficient. He picks and chooses his shot. OEL just lets it go, and half the time it ends up in the defenseman's shin pad. So
if it's off defenders instead of his own teammates, like
yeah,
shins or backs or something like off their thighs,
yeah,
completely fine by me. I think honestly that's like addition by subtraction in some sort of way. Like you are adding to people's pain, so you are subtracting them out of the play, right? Like that's how
yeah,
it's sad. Needless, like sad to say, but like that is a could be a positive for the Leafs. Like hurting your opponent. Hey, who would have thought it? Hurting the guys that are playing defense on you is, that's how Zdeno Chara made a living. People were scared the hell out of his, and Shea Weber is another one, scared the hell out of his slap shot. And it makes people second guess, like trying to get their face in front of that. So
yeah. I mean, this is definitely morphed into more power play discussion than the blue line, but that's fine. I guess the one note you could throw out there is maybe the change isn't at defense, or maybe it doesn't matter as much Riley versus OEL. Maybe it's a move like Tavares off of PP1. Maybe you're putting a Domi there, a Knies there, a Cowan if he makes the team. So there's another wrinkle that you could definitely get into with the power play. I think we'll shelf the favorite offseason moves for this episode. We've still got some offseason left, and we can bring these up a little bit later on in September when we get there. So yeah, we'll wrap it up at that. Thanks so much for watching. Shout out to NHL Shop, shout out to Fubo, shout out to Razor. And yeah, we'll check you guys out in the next episode. Thanks for watching again.